Darren had always believed in the concept of unconditional trust. It was his moral foundation, something he held dear. At 32, he felt fortunate to have found Vera, a vibrant woman who seemed like the perfect match for him. She was intelligent, charming, and had a way of making every room feel lighter with her presence. People around them often said they were the ideal couple, and Darren couldn't help but agree. He believed in their love, in the life they were building together. Vera was a successful interior designer, and Darren worked as a project manager at a tech firm. They had been together for over 2 years when they decided to marry. Their wedding was in a small, picturesque town called Riverton, where both had grown up. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, and the idea of settling down seemed perfect. Darren thought they had the perfect life. Vera was everything he had ever dreamed of. She was smart, beautiful, and kind. The kind of woman every man hoped to spend his life with. 8 months into their marriage, Darren still felt as though he had won the lottery. They were happy, or so he thought. He trusted Vera with his heart completely, never once doubting her loyalty. He had no reason to. She was always supportive, always caring. They had their arguments, of course, but nothing that would ever make Darren question the foundation of their relationship. One Saturday afternoon, while Vera was out for lunch with her friends, Darren found himself alone in their shared home. It was a rare moment of peace, a chance to organize the pile of files on the computer that had been building up over the past few months. Travel photos, work documents, old backups. Everything was a mess. As Darren dragged and dropped files into new folders, he noticed something odd. Vera's cloud account was still open on the computer. She had a habit of forgetting to log out of her accounts, a small quirk that always made Darren smile. Normally, he would have closed the window without thinking twice. But today something caught his eye. There on the screen was a folder with the label, "Goodbye. Do not open." Darren paused for a moment. The warning seemed strange. Why would Vera label a folder like that? He debated closing it, but the curiosity inside him grew stronger. What could be inside? Maybe it was just something embarrassing, like old party photos or silly memories from a girl's night out. He almost closed the window, but something about the label, the intensity of the "do not open," made him click. Inside the folder were 3 videos and several photos. The largest video file, nearly an hour long, immediately caught Darren's attention. His heart raced as he clicked play, expecting nothing more than a collection of party clips, nothing out of the ordinary. But as the video started, it was exactly what he had expected. A group of Vera's friends, all laughing and drinking in a fancy hotel room. Pink champagne, tiaras, and loud music filled the screen. Everyone was dancing in that carefree, uncoordinated way that only happens at a bachelorette party. Darren smiled at the sight. His wife looked radiant, full of life. It was exactly the kind of scene he imagined when he thought of Vera. Fun, free-spirited, and surrounded by people who loved her. He even chuckled at a few of the ridiculous dances her friends were attempting. It was fun, innocent, a typical bachelorette party. But then something changed. Around the 12-minute mark, the camera angle shifted. The person filming followed Vera into another room, a suite connected to the main party space. Darren's stomach dropped. As the camera followed Vera into the room, Darren could make out the figures of several men. These weren't waiters or hotel staff, they were just young guys in casual clothes holding drinks. And Vera didn't seem surprised at all. In fact, she looked as though she had been expecting them. She walked up to one of the men, a tall guy with dark hair, and hugged him. But this wasn't just a friendly hug. It was intimate, too intimate. Darren squinted at the screen, trying to make out who the man was. Then it hit him. It was Daniel, one of Vera's friends. No, a guy who had been at their wedding. Darren had met him only once or twice, but he knew who he was. Vera had introduced him as a friend of the family. Darren had even invited him to the wedding at Vera's insistence, as it seemed like the polite thing to do. But what was happening in this video? Daniel had his hand on Vera's waist, pulling her close, whispering something in her ear. Vera laughed, tilting her head, and then something happened that made Darren's blood run cold. They kissed. It wasn't a playful, quick kiss. It was slow, deep, deliberate, full of longing. Darren paused the video. His hands were trembling, and he looked around the room as if needing to confirm that he was alone, that no one else could see what he was seeing. He couldn't believe it. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Could it be a joke? Maybe Vera was drunk and didn't realize what she was doing? He shook his head, trying to calm himself. It couldn't be real, could it? But when he hit play again, the hope that this was some sort of mistake quickly faded. Vera wasn't drunk. She wasn't stumbling or slurring her words. She was clear-headed, laughing at jokes, carrying on conversations with her friends, and staying close to Daniel the entire time. At one point, the camera caught them stepping out onto a hotel balcony. Darren fast-forwarded a few minutes. When they came back inside, Vera's blouse was wrinkled, her lipstick smudged. Daniel discreetly adjusted his belt. Darren's heart sank as he checked the timestamp on the video. It had been recorded just 2 days before their wedding. 2 days before Vera had stood at the altar, looked him in the eyes and promised to be faithful to him forever. He slammed the laptop shut and stood up, pacing the room like a man trapped in a nightmare. How many times had this happened? Was it just that night? Daniel had been at their wedding, congratulating them, smiling for photos, and all of it had been a lie. His mind swirled with anger and confusion, but Darren forced himself to think clearly. He couldn't confront Vera yet, not with just this video. He needed more information. He needed to understand how far this had gone, how deep the deception ran. If she was capable of this just days before their wedding, what else had she been hiding? He grabbed his phone, dialed the number of a private investigator a colleague had recommended to him months earlier, during a work case. With his hands shaking, he sent a quick message explaining the situation and requesting an urgent meeting. The response came almost immediately. They would meet the next morning. Darren wasn't sure what to do next. He couldn't just go and confront Vera with everything he had seen. Not yet. He had to be sure. He had to be smart about it. The next morning, Darren met with the private investigator, a no-nonsense man named Jack, in a small coffee shop downtown. Jack was efficient and direct, his demeanor cold but professional. As Darren explained the situation, Jack listened carefully, asking only for the basics: Vera's full name, her social media accounts, and access to her devices. Darren handed over Vera's cloud account login and gave Jack the green light to dig deeper. Jack reassured him that he could recover deleted files, erased messages, even location histories, and that it would take no more than 48 hours to gather everything. "You'll have all the answers soon enough," Jack said, his voice steady, calm. Darren, though still reeling from the discovery the day before, nodded and left the meeting with a mix of dread and anticipation. He knew he couldn't confront Vera yet, but every minute that ticked by only made him feel further from the person he thought he knew. Back home, Darren slipped into his normal routine, pretending everything was fine. Vera returned later that evening, smiling, talking about her lunch with friends, a new design project she was excited about. She didn't notice the tension in Darren's eyes, the way his smile didn't quite reach his lips. He acted like everything was normal, because for now he couldn't do anything else. He couldn't let her suspect a thing. That night, Darren tossed and turned in bed, his mind spinning. He kept thinking about the video. The kiss. Vera and Daniel. How long had it been going on? Had she been hiding this relationship all along? The questions were endless, gnawing at him like a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. He couldn't rest, couldn't let go of the burning feeling in his chest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Vera's face, laughing, smiling, dancing with her friends. And then he saw Daniel, his hand on her waist, pulling her close. The next day was agony for Darren, each hour dragging on like a lifetime. His phone remained silent, the waiting unbearable. He kept busy at work, but the thought of Vera, the lies, the betrayal, it all loomed over him like a dark cloud. Finally, on Thursday afternoon, the call came. Darren was in his office, the door locked, when the phone buzzed on his desk. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the name on the screen. It was Jack. "Darren," Jack said, his voice steady but with a slight edge. "I've got everything." Darren's stomach tightened. "Tell me," he said, trying to keep his voice even. "The affair didn't start at the Bachelorette party. It started months before you even got engaged," Jack explained. "I've recovered messages, months of them, between Vera and Daniel. They were meeting secretly the entire time you two were together. It's all there, Darren. Pictures, videos, and explicit texts." Darren leaned back in his chair, feeling as though the room was closing in around him. "What else?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Jack continued, "Vera knew exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just playing games. She was playing you. I found messages where she laughed about you being the safe plan, a stable guy with money. She said Daniel was the fun." Darren felt the weight of those words hit him like a ton of bricks. The fun. That's what she thought of him? Just a safety net? "I'm sending you everything now. Screenshots, videos, timestamps. You'll have all the proof you need," Jack said, his voice softer now. "It's all in black and white, Darren. She never had any intention of being faithful." Darren hung up the phone slowly. His head was spinning, but there was no going back now. He had all the proof. Vera's betrayal was undeniable. He wasn't sure how to feel anymore, angry, devastated, or something else entirely. But one thing was clear. His marriage had been built on lies. He stood up from his desk, walking to the window and looking out over the city. The day was clear, the sky a bright blue, but inside, it felt like everything was crumbling. What was he supposed to do now? The answer came quickly. He couldn't just sit on this information. He couldn't let her continue to lie to him. He needed to confront Vera, but not yet. Not until he had everything in hand. He couldn't risk anything slipping through the cracks. Darren spent the next few hours reading through the messages Jack had sent him. His hands shook as he scrolled through the intimate conversations between Vera and Daniel, the promises of secret meetings, the crude jokes, and the constant assurances that Vera's marriage to Darren was just a convenient arrangement. There were no apologies, no remorse, just cold, calculated manipulation. The worst part? Vera had been playing him from the start. She had never loved him in the way he had loved her. She had married him for security, for stability, and for the comfort of knowing she could have it all. As Darren sat in his office, the weight of it all sinking in, he knew what he had to do next. He would wait until Vera came home, and when she did, everything would change. It wasn't just about confronting her anymore. It was about taking control. It was about ending the lies. And he wasn't going to let her manipulate him any longer. The next chapter would be the beginning of the end for Vera's game. The night fell quietly over Darren's home as he sat in the living room, the TV on but his mind far away from the scenes flickering on the screen. Vera was due home soon, and Darren's heart beat steadily in his chest, every pulse a reminder of the decision he had to make. The files Jack had sent him were now printed out, sitting on the coffee table in neat, undeniable stacks. Messages, photos, and even videos, all documenting Vera's betrayal in excruciating detail. Every word from the investigator echoed in his mind. She was playing you. She never had any intention of being faithful. Darren had tried to keep his emotions in check all day, to pretend that nothing was wrong, but as the minutes ticked by, the weight of the truth became heavier. He had to confront her. He couldn't live with this secret anymore. He had to make her face the lies she had told him, the life she had built on deceit. He stood up as the sound of the front door unlocking reached his ears. Vera's voice, bright and casual, drifted in from the hallway as she stepped inside. She was in a good mood, her usual smile on her face as she called out to him. "Darren, I'm home. Guess what? I think I'm going to land that big project I've been working on. I'm so excited." Darren didn't respond right away. He was still standing by the window, watching her reflection in the glass as she walked toward him. Her energy, the way she always seemed to radiate happiness, everything about her had once felt like warmth, but now it was a facade, a performance that he saw right through. "Darren?" she asked again, her voice a little more tentative now, noticing his stillness. He turned to face her, his expression calm but hard. "We need to talk," he said simply, his voice flat, giving nothing away. He motioned for her to sit down on the couch. Vera hesitated, her brows furrowing slightly. "What's wrong? You're acting strange." Darren didn't sit. He stood in front of her, watching as the smile slowly faded from her face. She was nervous now, sensing that something was off. Vera sat down, crossing her legs, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "I don't want to drag this out," Darren began, his voice steady. "I've seen the video. The one from your bachelorette party." Vera's face immediately paled. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Don't try to deny it, Vera," Darren said, cutting her off. "I saw it with my own eyes. I saw you with Daniel. I saw you kiss him. And I know what's been going on between you two." Vera's eyes widened in panic. Her lips trembled as she opened and closed her mouth, but she couldn't find the words to explain herself. The room felt colder, the air thicker with every passing second. Darren's gaze never wavered from hers, his emotions now carefully locked away behind a mask of calm. "I've also seen the messages," Darren continued, his voice lower now, more deliberate. "I know what you've been saying to him. How you've been meeting him behind my back. How you've been laughing about how convenient I am, how I'm just this safe plan." The words cut through Vera like a knife. She gasped, her face flushing with a mixture of shock and guilt. She opened her mouth again, but this time, something in her eyes betrayed her. She knew there was no escaping this. No more excuses. The truth was already out in the open. I didn't mean for things to get so complicated," Vera finally stammered, her voice shaky. She stood up, taking a step toward Darren. "It's not what you think, Darren. You don't understand. I was just—" "Don't," Darren interrupted coldly, holding up a hand to stop her. "No more lies, Vera. I've seen it all. I know what's been going on. And frankly, I'm done pretending that everything's okay." Vera's eyes were filled with tears now, but Darren didn't look away. He had no sympathy left. Her tears no longer moved him. "I was afraid," Vera whispered, her voice breaking. "Afraid of losing you, Darren. You gave me everything I wanted, stability, a future. I thought I could keep both of you in my life without it ever getting out of hand. But it did. And I'm sorry." Darren's eyes narrowed. "Sorry? Sorry for what, Vera? For cheating? For using me as a stepping stone while you kept Daniel around for the fun? For lying to my face every single day we were married?" His voice rose with each question, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You didn't just betray me, Vera. You betrayed everything we built together. And now there's no going back." Vera took a shaky breath, her body trembling. "I never meant to hurt you, Darren. I was just so confused. I thought I could have it all." Darren took a step forward, his expression hardening. "Well, you can't. Not anymore. This marriage? It's over. And you're going to have to deal with the consequences of your actions." Vera's face crumpled as she broke down in tears. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands as her sobs filled the room. Darren, unmoved, took a deep breath. His heart was pounding in his chest, but there was no emotion left. Only a hollow emptiness where his love for her used to be. "I'm not going to make this harder than it has to be," Darren said, his voice quieter now, but still filled with a quiet authority. "I've already contacted an attorney. The divorce proceedings start tomorrow. I've got all the evidence, Vera. The video, the messages, everything. There's no way out of this." Vera looked up at him through tear-filled eyes. "You're really going to do this?" she whispered, her voice broken. Darren nodded. "Yes, I am. And you should know that I've already made arrangements. You won't be getting anything out of this marriage. You signed a prenuptial agreement. Everything I have stays with me." The shock on Vera's face was palpable. She had no words now, only the painful realization that the life she had so carefully built was falling apart in front of her. Darren stood in silence for a long moment, letting the weight of his words sink in. He wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even hurt. He was just done. "I'll give you the space to pack up your things," Darren finally said, his voice steady. "And after that, you need to leave." He turned and walked toward the door, leaving Vera there on the couch, alone with her tears and the shattered remains of their life together. The days that followed were a blur of cold, mechanical motions. Darren went through the motions of his daily life: work, meetings, brief interactions with people, while his mind replayed the conversation with Vera over and over. He had made the right choice. He knew it. But the finality of it all still left a bitter taste in his mouth. There was no denying it. Everything he had believed in, everything he had worked so hard to build, had been nothing more than a mirage. Vera had spent the past few days packing up her things. Darren had offered her no emotional support, no comfort. She didn't deserve it. Every time he saw her, she was more broken, more desperate for any sign of affection. But Darren had long since shut off those feelings. She had manipulated him for too long. Her tears meant nothing now. By the time the divorce proceedings officially began, Vera had moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. Darren hadn't spoken to her much since the night of the confrontation, except to handle the logistics of dividing their assets, which was all that mattered now. The prenup, signed in the early days of their relationship, was ironclad. It had been a safeguard for both of them, though Darren never expected it to become so crucial. Still, it meant that Vera was walking away with nothing. Darren sat in his lawyer's office, the stack of evidence sitting on the table between him and the attorney. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire, had been working diligently to ensure the divorce would go smoothly and that Darren would be protected from any further manipulation from Vera. She glanced over the documents, her expression neutral, though Darren could see the approval in her eyes. "You've done everything by the book," Claire said, looking up from the papers. "With the evidence we've gathered, the video, the messages, the confessions, Vera doesn't stand a chance. We're filing for an annulment based on fraud. This will be over in no time." Darren nodded, but the words felt hollow. He didn't care about the legal battle or the money anymore. His focus was on the one thing that mattered now: moving forward. The future. The first court appearance was quiet. Darren and Vera sat on opposite sides of the room, her face pale and red from the strain of the past few weeks. Vera's lawyer, a man named Gregory, was doing his best to argue that the prenup was invalid, that the marriage was based on love and not convenience. But every attempt was swiftly shot down by Darren's lawyer, who presented the evidence of Vera's affair with Daniel, the messages, and the video. Vera's attempt to hide behind a mask of innocence was falling apart piece by piece. Darren couldn't bring himself to look at her. He didn't need to. The guilt and the remorse in her eyes were enough. He saw how she was trying to win back sympathy, how she tried to plead with the judge, but it was all in vain. She was caught and there was no escaping the truth. The judge's ruling came a few weeks later. The annulment was granted. The divorce was final. Darren kept his assets, his house, his savings, everything they had accumulated during their marriage. Vera, on the other hand, was left with nothing. The reality of it hit her hard. When she was handed the final decree, Vera's expression was blank. She looked at it for a long moment as if trying to process the overwhelming weight of it all. "I never meant for it to end like this," Vera whispered, her voice barely audible. She stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, looking at Darren with eyes full of shame and regret. But there was no sympathy left in Darren's heart. He had already made his peace with everything. "I know," Darren replied simply, his voice steady. "But you made your choices, Vera. And now you have to live with them." Without another word, Darren turned and walked away. He didn't look back. The door to their past had been closed. And there was no going back. The days that followed were a strange kind of relief. Darren no longer had to look over his shoulder, wondering if Vera was hiding something, questioning every word she said. He was free, free from the lies, free from the emotional turmoil. It wasn't easy and the scars of the betrayal lingered in the back of his mind, but he was free to rebuild. For the first time in months, Darren felt a sense of clarity. His life wasn't defined by the deceit of the past. It was his to shape, his to build. And for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to look forward. He threw himself into his work with renewed energy. He took on new projects, began working on a long-term plan that would take him abroad. His colleagues noticed the change in him, the quiet confidence he had gained. He wasn't the man he had been when he first walked into that marriage with Vera. He was stronger now. He had learned the hard way that no one could define his happiness except himself. One evening, after a long day at the office, Darren found himself walking through the city park, the setting sun casting an orange glow across the horizon. He stopped at a bench, sat down, and let out a deep breath. Life was moving forward. He had learned not to waste time on the past. It was a lesson he had learned through the pain of betrayal, but it had made him stronger. He took out his phone and saw a message from a colleague, Emily. They had been working together for the past few months, and there was something different about her. She was kind, honest, and most importantly, transparent. They had been getting closer, slowly but steadily. Darren wasn't sure where it would go, but for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of the future. As he typed a quick reply, a small smile tugged at his lips. For the first time in a long time, Darren felt the warmth of hope. A hope that, maybe, just maybe, there was something better waiting for him after all the pain. Life was moving on, and Darren was ready to embrace whatever came next. The months following the divorce were a period of quiet transformation for Darren. He had gone through the motions of healing, of letting go of the past, but now something had shifted within him. He was no longer defined by the betrayal or the scars of his marriage to Vera. He had found a new rhythm in his life, one that was focused on building something meaningful both personally and professionally. His relationship with Emily had blossomed slowly. At first, it was nothing more than a friendship built on shared projects at work, but over time, Darren had found himself drawn to her kindness, her honesty, and her unwavering sense of integrity. Emily wasn't like Vera. She wasn't playing games, wasn't hiding anything. What Darren had learned to appreciate most was her transparency, something he had never had with Vera. There were no secrets between them, no false pretenses. Emily's presence was calm and steady, and with each passing day, Darren felt his trust in her grow. They started spending more time together outside of work. Lunches, walks in the park, casual dinners. It wasn't rushed. They took things slowly, not forcing anything. Darren was in no hurry to jump into another relationship, but with Emily he felt something different, a quiet promise of something genuine. And that was enough for now. One evening, after a long day of work, Darren found himself sitting at a small cafe, waiting for Emily to arrive. He had suggested a casual dinner to catch up on their day, but in the back of his mind, Darren knew there was something more to it. The thought of Emily had started to occupy his mind more frequently, and he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. As he sipped his coffee, he replayed his life over the past 2 years, everything that had led him here. His marriage, the shock of Vera's betrayal, the raw pain of discovering the truth. It had been a storm he had weathered alone, but now, looking back, he could see how far he had come. He wasn't the same person he had been before the divorce. The pain had hardened him, yes, but it had also reshaped him, giving him the strength to face life with a new perspective. When Emily walked through the door, Darren's thoughts shifted instantly. She smiled as she spotted him, her face lighting up with a warmth that made his chest tighten. They exchanged greetings, and as they sat down, Darren noticed how easy it was to be around her. No pretense, no hidden agendas, just a shared connection that felt natural. "So," Emily began as they tucked into their meals, "how's the new project going? You've been pretty busy lately." Darren smiled, grateful for the easy flow of conversation. "It's going well. A lot of long hours, but it's exciting. I'm finally getting to work on something I've always wanted to. What about you? How's everything at the design firm?" "Busy, but I'm managing," Emily replied, her eyes sparkling with genuine enthusiasm. "It's a lot of hard work, but I love it. Honestly, it's been a great challenge for me." As they continued to talk, Darren couldn't help but notice how different this moment felt compared to his past. With Vera, conversations had often felt forced, laced with uncertainty and lies. But with Emily, everything felt natural, easy. It wasn't about impressing each other, it was about simply being. After dinner, they took a walk through the nearby park, the evening air crisp and cool. They strolled side by side, not needing to fill every moment with words. The silence between them was comfortable, familiar. It was a silence that didn't feel empty. Finally, as they reached a bench near the lake, Emily paused and turned to him, her eyes soft and sincere. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice hesitant but calm. Darren looked at her, sensing something important was coming. "What's on your mind?" "I know we've only known each other for a short time and I don't want to rush things," she began, her hands nervously folding and unfolding the fabric of her jacket. "But I just want to say that I really enjoy spending time with you, Darren. I think you're someone special. And I don't want to take things too fast, but I also don't want to let this opportunity slip by." Darren's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected this, but hearing her words felt like the answer to a question he hadn't fully articulated in his own mind. "I feel the same way, Emily," he said, his voice steady. "I've been through a lot these past couple of years and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for anything like this. But with you I feel something real. And I don't want to let it go either." Emily's smile was small but genuine, her eyes shining with the quiet understanding that they both shared. She reached out, placing a hand gently on his arm. "I'm glad to hear that." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to pause around them, the quiet rustle of the leaves, the soft ripple of the lake's surface, the distant hum of the city. It was peaceful, and Darren realized for the first time in a long time that he was ready to let go of the past. He wasn't carrying the weight of Vera's lies anymore. He was no longer bound by the chains of his old life. Emily's presence in his life wasn't a replacement for the past, it was a new beginning, a fresh chapter. And for the first time in months, Darren allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a future that was bright and free from the shadows of his previous relationship. As they sat there, watching the stars begin to emerge in the sky, Darren knew that whatever came next, he would face it with a renewed sense of hope. He wasn't the same man he had been when he walked into that marriage, but now he was someone stronger, someone who had learned that trust, honesty, and love were the only things that truly mattered. The future was waiting for him. And for the first time in a long time, Darren was ready to embrace it.